Hello everyone, I'm so excited that you guys are here. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day so far. So today I want to share something with you that I think is going to change the way you sit in every single life insurance meeting from this point forward. And it's not from a sales book, it's actually from a 1966 marketing book called Breakthrough Advertising by a guy named Eugene Schwartz. Very smart guy, and the first chapter of that book has one sentence in it that when you actually understand what he's saying, it kind of like pulls back the curtains on why most life insurance agents are losing the sale before they ever get to the part where they talk about the policy. Most agents are walking into the meeting trying to do the one thing that Schwartz says is impossible. They're trying to create desire for life insurance. And what Schwartz teaches in that chapter is the desire is already there. The desire was in the room before you got there. You didn't put desire in the prospect. You cannot just put desire in the prospect. You can't. Your only job is to channel the desire. And once I understood what he was saying, the way I sit in every single meeting, the way I write ads, the way I leave voicemails, the way I open discovery calls, all of that changed. And so what I want to do in this video is walk you through what Schwartz actually said in chapter 1 of that book, and then translate it into like the life insurance world sentence by sentence. So by the end of this video, you know exactly what to do differently next morning. Okay, so with that being said, let me tell you what Schwartz actually wrote. He opens chapter 1 with a sentence that I want to share with you. He says sales copy, in other words, sales text, marketing, email, whatever it may be, cannot create desire for a product. It can only take the hopes, dreams, fears, and desires that already exist in the hearts of millions of people and then focus those already existing desires onto a particular product. And then he says it again like 2 paragraphs later because he wants to make sure that we don't miss it. He says, this mass desire must already be there. It must already exist. You cannot create it and you cannot fight it, but you can and must direct it. You must channel it and focus it onto your particular product. And the reason he repeats himself like that is because he knew, even back in 1966, that almost every advertiser in the world was making the same mistake. They were spending all of their money trying to put desire into the customer instead of finding the desire that was already there and then pointing it at the product. And Schwartz, he says, when you try to fight against existing desire, you die. He gives the like Edsel example, he gives the 1948 Chrysler example, he gives like the Ford safety campaign example. All of them were good products and all of them had like big budgets behind them, big marketing budgets, and all of them ran straight into a wall because the market already wanted something different. And the advertiser was trying to talk them out of it. And the reason this is so important for us as life insurance agents is that is exactly what most of us are doing in every single meeting. We're sitting across from a prospect and we're trying to convince them to want life insurance. We're trying to put desire in. We're explaining why they need it. We're explaining what the carrier does. We're explaining what an IUL is, what a term policy is, what a whole life policy is. We're explaining what living benefits are. We're explaining what term versus whole life is. Like we're putting desire, and what Schwartz is saying is that is the wrong job. The desire is already there. Your job is to surface it. Now, with that being said, I want to slow down on this for just a second because the moment you really understand this, it almost feels uncomfortable. Because, for example, every parent who has ever looked, and I'm not a parent yet, but I'm saying like maybe, I think this is how they feel. Every parent who has ever looked at their kids before bed already feels a desire that the life insurance policy is going to satisfy. They've already felt it. They've already had like the 2 a.m. thought. They've already pictured the worst case scenario. They've already wondered if everything is set up right if something happens. The desire is in the room. before you sat down. Every business owner who has a partner with kids in private school has already wondered what happens if the partner doesn't come back from their trip. Every spouse who's looking at a mortgage payment that's double what their income alone would cover has already felt it. And the fact of the matter is, by the time a real prospect is sitting across from you, they've already done the desire work in their head, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades, before they ever sat down with you. And what most agents do is they walk in and they pretend that desire isn't there already, and they start trying to build it from scratch, and the prospect just sits there politely nodding, waiting for the agent to stop talking, because the agent is doing a job the prospect already did themselves. So let me walk you through one of the stages Schwartz says every advertiser goes through, and then I'll translate it into what we should be doing as life insurance agents in a life insurance meeting. Stage 1, you have to choose the most powerful mass desire you can tap. He also says stage 2, acknowledge that desire and then offer the means to satisfy it in one statement with your product. And then stage 3, prove your product actually satisfies the desire. And he says the most important decision of the 3 stages is stage 1. So that's the one that we're primarily going to go through, choosing which desire to anchor to. Because every single product, and this is once again from the book, every product appeals to 2, 3, or 4 of these mass desires, but only one can predominate. Only one can reach out through your marketing to your customer. Only one is the kind of like the key that unlocks the maximum economic power at the particular time your marketing is published. And your choice of these alternate desires is the most important step you will take in writing your ad, sending an email, having a meeting with someone. And if it's wrong, nothing else that you do in your ad, for example, will matter. If you choose the wrong desire to anchor to, nothing else you do in the meeting matters. The follow-up doesn't matter. The carrier doesn't matter. The rate doesn't matter. The writers don't matter. The presentation doesn't matter. Like, none of it matters if the desire you anchored to wasn't the one that was already running in the prospect's head. And here's where kind of like Schwartz really cracks it open. And for simplicity purposes, he uses an automobile as an example. He says one single car can tap 6 completely different desires. Transportation, right, which is the basic ability to get from one place to another. Dependability, the freedom from breakdown and also embarrassment maybe. Economy, which is gas, savings, trade-in value. Power, horsepower, and the feeling of dominance on the highway. Recognition, which would give them status, admiration, maybe from the neighbors. And value, which is the amount of car that they get for the dollar. And those are 6 totally different desires inside one car. And he says only one of them can win the headline. If you pick recognition, you sell a Cadillac. If you pick economy, you sell a Honda Civic. If you pick power, you sell a muscle car, maybe like a Mustang, a Camaro. Same physical object, completely different sale, depending on which desire you anchor to. And every life insurance policy is exactly the same way. The same exact policy can tap a stack of different desires. For example, the desire to make sure that your kids stay in the same school district if something happens to you. The desire to make sure the spouse doesn't have to sell the house in the first 6 months after one of the spouses passes away. The desire for a business owner to make sure the partner's family doesn't walk in and demand forced buyout the week after the funeral. The desire to leave a paid off house instead of a mortgage. The desire to have living benefits in case of like an illness, whatever it may be. The desire for cash value that can be accessed without going to a bank. Once again, same policy, but 6 different sales, depending on which desire the agent anchors to in the first 10 minutes of the meeting, or the advertising or the email or the text message. And what most agents do is they walk in and they start talking about like all six at the same time, and they wonder why the prospect just goes blank. The prospect goes blank because you're trying to anchor to all of them at once, and you've anchored to none of them. And so the prospect by minute 15 of the meeting has nothing specific in their head, just kind of like a vague sense that you're trying to sell them something. And the agent who scales, the agent who actually gets to grow their business, is the agent who, before the meeting, has already decided which one of those six desires is the dominant one for this specific prospect, and then anchors the entire conversation, the entire follow-up to that one desire. Just like Schwartz said in 1966, only one can predominate. You pick it and then you anchor everything else to it. Okay, so now I'm gonna touch briefly on the second move that Schwartz talks about in this book because I feel like it's very important. In chapter 1, he calls this the physical product versus the functional product. And what he says is every product is actually two products. There is the physical product, which is the steel, the glass, the paper, whatever the manufacturer made. And there is the functional product, which is what that physical thing does for the person who owns it. And he says the physical product doesn't sell. People don't buy the steel in a car, the glass in a vase, the tobacco in a cigarette, or the paper in a book. The physical part exists only so that the functional part can be delivered. And what we as life insurance agents are doing almost universally is selling the physical product. And I'll explain in just a second. We're selling the policy. We're selling the carrier. We're selling the riders. We're selling the death benefit amount. We're selling the cash value. We're selling all of the steel and glass of the policy. And then we wonder why the prospect goes, hey, let me check with my spouse. They're checking with their spouse because they have no idea what they're actually being asked to buy. They're looking at the steel and the glass and trying to figure out if it's a good deal, and they cannot because nobody has ever taught them how to evaluate the steel and the glass of a policy. What they came in wanting was the functional product, the life their family keeps, the school district their kids stay in, the house their spouse keeps, the business their partner cannot just steamroll. That is what they're buying. The policy is just like the steel skeleton you're charging them for. The functional product is the life that keeps existing because you set this up correctly. And so when you put this whole framework together, what you start to realize is the agent who is closing is not the agent with a better script. The agent who is closing is the agent who, before they ever opened their mouth, decided which one of the six possible desires they were going to anchor to, named it in the first 10 seconds of the conversation, and then spent the rest of the meeting connecting the functional product, the life the family keeps, to that one specific desire. And that is the whole move. And the agent who is not closing is the agent who is trying to put a desire into a prospect who already had desire, while at the same time selling the physical product instead of the functional product. That agent ends every meeting exhausted, confused, frustrated, and the prospect ends every meeting saying, let me check with my spouse. And so what I want you to take away from this video is one sentence, and I want you to write it down if you have a pen and paper with you. The desire is already in the room. Your job is to surface the desire, not create it. And the fact of the matter is, every meeting you have for the rest of your career, the desire is already going to be in the room before you sit down. Your only job is to figure out which one of the six possible desires is the dominant one for this specific person, for this specific niche. And then you name it in the first 10 seconds of the conversation, and then you connect the functional product, which is the life their family keeps, to that one desire for the rest of the conversation. That's pretty much the whole game that I wanted to share with you, and pretty much the game that Schwartz was trying to teach back in 1966. And funny enough, many years later, it still works in the life insurance business and in any business because human desire has not changed. As a matter of fact, it worked 60 years ago and it will still work 60 years from now, 500 years from now, 1,000 years from now, because human desire has not changed. People still want their kids to be okay. People still want their spouse to keep the house. People still want, and that ranked, people still want their business to outlive them. The desire has been there the whole time. You just have to stop trying to put in a desire and start surfacing what was already there. So I hope you got value from this video. I'm here. I'm rooting for you guys. Take care. Let's get to work.